The great hall was filled with creatures from 7 different worlds. They sat in floating chairs that circled a massive holographic display. Light from distant stars came through the glass ceiling. This was Station Valar Prime, the center of galactic power. Here, the strongest species in the known universe made decisions that affected billions of lives. Ambassador Torek stood at the center platform. He was tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Veldani, had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They feared nothing. They respected very little. And today, Torek was here to talk about a small blue planet that had annoyed him for 2 centuries. "Honored members of the Council," Torek said. His voice was smooth like oil. "I bring before you the matter of the planet called Earth." The holographic display changed. A small world appeared, covered in blue oceans and green land. White clouds moved slowly across its surface. It looked peaceful. It looked weak. "For 200 years, we have tried to contact this world," Torek continued. "We have sent 47 diplomatic messages. We have offered them membership in our great civilization. We have promised them technology, trade, and protection." He paused and looked around the room. The representatives from the Mordek Empire, the Solari Collective, and 4 other species watched with mild interest, and in 200 years they have not answered. Not once. Not a single word. Laughter filled the hall. The Mordek representative, a massive creature covered in black armor plates, made a sound like grinding rocks. "Perhaps they are too stupid to understand," he said. "Perhaps they have no technology at all," added the Solari delegate, a being made of shifting silver light. "Perhaps they still live in caves." Torek smiled. This was exactly the reaction he wanted. "I have studied their world carefully. They have basic space travel. They have reached their moon and sent small machines to nearby planets, but they have not left their star system. They have not built any weapons we can detect. They have not developed fold space technology." He waved his 4 arms dramatically. "They are primitives. Honored delegates. Children playing with simple toys, while the adults of the galaxy build empires." More laughter. The representatives enjoyed this. It felt good to look down on others. "I propose," Torek said, "that we declare Earth a harvestable world. Their genetic material could be useful for research. Their planet has valuable resources, and since they clearly lack the intelligence to join us as equals, we should treat them as what they are, livestock." The Mordek representative leaned forward. His name was General Vrax, and he commanded the largest military fleet in the Mordek Empire. "My ships could reach their world in 6 cycles. We could begin collection immediately." "Excellent," Torek replied. "Shall we vote?" 12,000 light-years away, deep beneath the mountains of the Korean peninsula, Admiral Park Do-hyun watched this conversation on a massive screen. The transmission had been intercepted by satellites hidden throughout the galaxy, satellites that the aliens had never detected. Admiral Park was 58 years old. His hair was gray. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp like knives. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. His father had prepared before him, and his grandfather before that. 3 generations of the Park family had served in humanity's greatest secret. "They want to harvest us," said Captain Lee Yuna. She stood beside the admiral, her arms crossed. She was 34, small but fierce, the best ship commander in the fleet. "Like animals. They have always seen us as animals," Admiral Park replied calmly. "This is not new, but now they will act on it." "Yes." The admiral smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Now they will act. And that is exactly what we have been waiting for." The underground base was called Hanyul, which meant heaven in Korean. But there was nothing heavenly about this place. It was a fortress of steel and secrets, buried 3 kilometers beneath the earth. 10,000 people worked here, and not one of them existed in any government record. Lieutenant Kwon Minho approached with a tablet in his hands. He was young, only 29. But he was the best tactical analyst Earth had ever produced. He had memorized the battle formations of every alien species. He knew their weapons, their weaknesses, their fears. "Sir," Minho said, "the Mordek fleet is already preparing to move. General Vrax has requested permission to lead the harvest mission personally." "Of course he has," Admiral Park said. "Vrax is hungry for glory. He thinks this will be easy." "Will we intercept them before they reach Earth?" Captain Lee asked. The Admiral shook his head. "No. We will let them come." Both officers looked surprised. "Sir?" Admiral Park turned away from the screen. He walked toward a large window that looked out over an enormous underground cavern, and there, in that cavern, rested the truth that humanity had hidden for 200 years. Ships. Massive warships, row after row, stretching into the darkness. Their hulls were black as night, designed to absorb all light and radar. Their weapons were built from technology that humanity had stolen from alien signals and then improved beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "For 2 centuries we have been silent," Admiral Park said softly. "They think our silence means we are weak. They think we did not answer because we could not understand. They are wrong." He turned back to face his officers. "We did not answer because we were listening. We were learning. We were building. Every transmission they sent, we decoded. Every fleet movement they made, we tracked. Every weapon they designed, we studied and made better." Captain Lee Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. She had served for 12 years. She had trained in secret all her life. But hearing the Admiral speak these words made the reality feel suddenly very real. "The Mordek think they are coming to harvest sheep," Admiral Park continued. "They will discover that they have walked into a den of wolves." He pressed a button on his command console. Throughout the base, alarms began to sound. Not alarms of warning, but alarms of awakening. After 200 years of sleeping, Earth's hidden fleet was about to open its eyes. "Send word to all commanders," Admiral Park ordered. "Begin preparation protocol. When the Mordek fleet arrives, we will not be here to greet them. But when they touch our colonies, when they harm our people, we will answer." His voice grew cold as winter ice. "And the galaxy will finally learn what human silence truly means." Far above, on Station Villar Prime, Ambassador Torek celebrated his victory. The vote had passed. Earth was now officially declared a harvestable world. The Mordek fleet would depart within the week. He raised a glass of expensive wine and laughed with General Vrax. "Two easy victories," he said. "Two easy victories," Vrax agreed. Neither of them knew that in the darkness between stars, 1,000 human warships were beginning to wake. Neither of them understood that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. Earth's silence was about to end. And when humanity finally spoke, the galaxy would tremble. Director Baek Sujin stood before 50 young officers in a room with no windows. The walls were gray metal. The air smelled of recycled oxygen. This was the heart of Hanyul, the most secret place on Earth. And these young men and women had just learned the truth about their world. "Everything you thought you knew is a lie," Director Baek said. Her voice was calm but powerful. She was 61 years old, with silver hair pulled back tight. She had dedicated her entire life to this moment, to training the next generation of warriors for a war that most humans did not know existed. "You grew up believing that humanity had never made contact with alien life. You believed that we were alone in the universe, still searching for answers. That is the story we tell the public. That is the story that keeps them safe." She pressed a button, and the wall behind her lit up with images. Old photographs, satellite data, intercepted signals. In the year 2147, exactly 200 years ago, humanity received its first message from the stars. The Veldani Empire was announcing its presence to primitive worlds, offering membership in their galactic civilization. Director Baek walked slowly across the room. World leaders gathered in secret. They debated for months. Should we answer? Should we announce ourselves to the galaxy? She stopped and faced the young officers. One man changed everything. His name was General Baek Junwoo. He was my grandfather. The image on the wall changed to show an old military photograph. A Korean general in his 60s, with hard eyes and a stern face. My grandfather studied the alien messages carefully. He noticed something that excited diplomats had missed. The Veldani spoke of membership, yes. But they also spoke of harvestable worlds. They spoke of lesser species. They spoke of the strong ruling the weak. Director Bake's voice grew harder. My grandfather understood immediately. The galaxy was not a place of peace and cooperation. It was a jungle, and humanity was being invited to enter that jungle as prey. She pressed another button. New images appeared, designs for ships, weapons, secret bases. General Bake convinced world leaders to stay silent, not because we were afraid, not because we were primitive, but because silence was our greatest weapon. While the aliens laughed at the mute world, we would listen, we would learn, we would prepare. Engineer Choi Tae-woo remembered hearing this story for the first time 20 years ago. Now he stood in the largest construction bay in human history, watching robots put the final pieces on humanity's greatest creation. The ship was called Jeomjong Taeyang, the Black Sunday. It was 3 kilometers long, with a hull made of materials that human scientists had invented by studying alien technology. It could fold space and travel faster than light. It carried weapons that could crack a planet in half, and it was just one of over 1,000 ships that humanity had built in secret. "Beautiful, isn't she?" said a voice beside him. Tae-woo turned to see analyst Han Minji approaching. She was 31. Brilliant. And responsible for decoding more alien communications than anyone else alive. Her work had revealed the weaknesses of every major species in the galaxy. "Beautiful and terrifying," Tae-woo replied. "Sometimes I wonder if we're doing the right thing." Minji stood beside him, looking up at the massive warship. "I used to wonder the same thing. Then I decoded the Mordek breeding programs." Tae-woo said nothing. He had read her reports. The Mordek harvested genetic material from primitive species to improve their own soldiers. Entire civilizations had been wiped out so that the Mordek could become stronger. "They see other species as resources," Minji continued. "Not as people. Not as equals. Just materials to be used and thrown away. We either prepare to fight, or we wait to be harvested." "I know," Tae-woo said quietly. "I know." In another part of the base, Admiral Park Do-hyun held a meeting with his senior commanders. 12 men and women sat around a circular table, each one responsible for 100 ships. "The Mordek fleet will depart in 3 days," Admiral Park announced. 200 warships under General Vrax. Their target is listed as Earth, but their flight path takes them near Shin-Terra first. Captain Lee Yuna leaned forward. "Shin-Terra. Our outer colony." "Yes. 2 million people living on a world the aliens don't know exists." Admiral Park's face was grave. "If the Mordek discover them by accident, they will attack. They will see defenseless humans, and they will not be able to resist. Then we should intercept the Mordek before they get close," one commander suggested. "No." Admiral Park shook his head. "If we intercept them in open space, we reveal ourselves too soon. The galaxy will know our strength before we are ready. Other species will prepare. Our advantage will be lost. But Shin-Terra has a small defense force, enough to slow the Mordek down, enough to send a distress call." Admiral Park's voice was heavy with the weight of his decision. "I will not sacrifice our people lightly. But if the Mordek attack Shin-Terra, it gives us something we need." Lieutenant Kwon Minho understood immediately. "A reason," he said. "A justified reason to strike back." "Exactly." Admiral Park met the eyes of every commander in the room. "When we finally reveal ourselves, the galaxy must see us as defenders, not aggressors. They must see that we strike only when struck first. The Mordek must fire the first shot." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. People on Shin-Terra might die, so that humanity could win a larger war. "I do not make this decision easily," Admiral Park said. "Every life on Shin-Terra matters to me, but if we reveal ourselves too soon, if we start a war without proper cause, then billions of humans across all our hidden colonies could die instead. I must think of the many, not just the few. Captain Lee spoke quietly. And if Shin Terra holds, if they don't discover the colony, then we wait. We continue to prepare. The Mordek fleet reaches Earth, finds nothing of value, and returns home confused. Admiral Park allowed himself a small smile. But I have studied General Vrax for 30 years. He is greedy. He is proud. If he passes near a human settlement, he will not ignore it. That night, Director Baek Soo-jin stood alone in her office, looking at a photograph on her wall. It showed 3 generations of her family. Her grandfather, her father, and herself as a young girl. Her grandfather had started this. Her father had continued it. And now, she would see it finished. 200 years of silence. She whispered to the photograph. 200 years of listening and learning. Was it worth it, grandfather? All the lies we told? All the truth we hid? The photograph did not answer. But in her heart, Soo-jin knew what her grandfather would say. Patience is the greatest weapon. Let them think you are weak. Let them laugh. Let them mock, and when they finally raise their hand against you, destroy them so completely that no one will ever dare laugh again. This was the doctrine of shadows. This was humanity's secret. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn why Earth had been silent for so long. In the construction bay, the lights on the Jeomjong Taeyang began to glow. The engines hummed with power. The greatest warship ever built by human hands was ready, and in every hidden base, on every secret station, 1,000 more ships waited with her. Earth's children were waking up, and they were hungry for justice. Shin Terra was a world of green hills and blue rivers. 2 million humans lived here. In cities built of white stone and glass, children played in parks. Farmers grew crops in fields that stretched to the horizon. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. It was everything humanity had hoped to build among the stars. Governor Yoon Ha-young walked through the morning market, smiling at the vendors and their fresh vegetables. She was 52 years old, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She had governed this colony for 15 years, and she loved its people like her own family. Governor. A young boy ran up to her, holding a red fruit. My father says you should try this. Our best harvest ever. Ha-young took the fruit and bit into it. Sweet juice ran down her chin, and she laughed. Tell your father, he grows miracles. The boy ran off, happy. Ha-young continued her walk, unaware that death was falling from the sky. General Vrax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Mordek destroyer Ironjaw. 200 warships flew behind him in perfect formation. They were supposed to be heading to Earth, but his sensors had detected something interesting. A human settlement, his officer reported. 2 million life signs, no defensive fleet, no orbital weapons. Vrax's eyes glowed with hunger. The Mordek were a warrior species, bred for conquest. They had crushed 100 civilizations. They had harvested 1,000 worlds. And now, a gift had fallen into their lap. Change course, Vrax ordered. We will collect samples here before continuing to Earth. This will be good practice for my soldiers. The Mordek ships turned toward Shin Terra like wolves circling a wounded deer. Sergeant Ryu Woojin was eating breakfast when the alarms started screaming. He dropped his spoon and ran, his training taking over before his mind could catch up. Within 2 minutes, he was in full combat armor, standing with his squad in the Colonial Defense Center. What's happening? He demanded. The answer came on the screen above them. 200 alien ships, blocking out the stars. Colonel Baejin Soo, commander of Shin Terra's defense force, stood before his 3,000 soldiers. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. The Mordek Empire has found us, he announced. They have 200 warships. We have 20 defense frigates and ground batteries. This is not a fight we can win. Silence. Every soldier knew what this meant. But we are not here to win, Colonel Bae continued. We are here to buy time. Every hour we hold, Every day we survive gives Earth time to respond. Our families are counting on us. Humanity is counting on us. He drew his sword, an old Korean blade that had been in his family for generations. We are the shield. We do not break. We do not run. We hold. 3,000 voices answered as one. We hold. Governor Yoon Ha-young evacuated the cities with desperate speed. Underground shelters built for earthquakes became hiding places for millions. Dr. No Eun-ji, the colony's chief physician, organized medical supplies in the deepest bunker. How many can we protect down here? Ha-young asked. Eun-ji's face was grim. Maybe 800,000. The shelters were never designed for orbital bombardment. Then we save who we can. Ha-young's voice cracked, but she did not cry. Leaders did not cry when their people needed strength. Start with the children. Then the elderly. Then everyone else. The first Mordek transmission came 30 minutes later. General Vrax's face appeared on every screen in the colony, a nightmare of black armor and red eyes. Humans, he said, his voice thick with contempt. You have 1 hour to surrender. All healthy adults will be taken for processing. The young and old will be disposed of. Resistance will result in complete destruction. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. You are prey. Accept your place in the natural order. The transmission ended. In the shelters, children cried. Parents held them close and whispered lies about everything being okay. Governor Ha-young walked to the communications center. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was steady. She typed 2 words and sent them across the stars to a blue planet that had never answered any alien message. They're here. Then she returned to her people and waited. The battle began at noon. Shin Terra's 20 frigates launched to meet 200 Mordek warships. It was not a battle, it was a sacrifice. Captain Song Myung-ho led the attack, his small ship diving straight at the enemy flagship. All ships, target their sensor arrays, he commanded. Blind them, slow them down. The frigates were fast and brave, but they were hopelessly outmatched. One by one, they exploded into light. Captain Song's ship lasted the longest 7 minutes of desperate fighting before a Mordek cannon tore it apart. But 7 minutes was enough. The Mordek sensors were damaged. Their formation was disrupted. And General Vrax was angry. Destroy the planet, he ordered. No more games, no more waiting. Turn their cities to ash. The bombardment began. Sergeant Ryu Woojin felt the ground shake as the first orbital strike hit. Then another. Then another. Fire fell from the sky like rain from hell. The city of New Busan took a direct hit. 50,000 people, gone in an instant. The farming district of Eastfield was next. Then the coastal towns. Then the mountain villages. Woojin led his squad through the burning streets, pulling survivors from rubble. A little girl was trapped under a collapsed building. He dug with his bare hands until his fingers bled, finally pulling her free. It's okay, he told her, though nothing was okay. You're safe now. Dr. No Eun-ji worked without rest. The wounded came in waves, burned, broken, dying. She had 3 other doctors and 20 nurses. They needed 300. We're running out of blood, a nurse reported. Then use mine, Yoon-ji said, rolling up her sleeve. Take what you need. She gave her blood while still performing surgery. She would not stop. She could not stop. In the command bunker, Colonel Bae Jin-soo watched his world burn. 3 of his cities were gone. 500,000 dead in the first hour alone. And the Mordek were preparing to land ground troops. Sir, his communications officer said. Still no response from Earth. Bae closed his eyes. He had sent 12 distress calls. 12 desperate messages begging for help. And Earth, silent Earth, had not answered a single one. They're not coming, one of his officers whispered. We're alone, perhaps, Colonel Bae said quietly. Or perhaps they are coming, and we simply need to hold longer. Either way, our duty remains the same. He opened his eyes and drew his sword again. All ground forces, prepare for enemy landing. We meet them on the beaches. We meet them in the streets. We meet them in every building and every tunnel. They will pay for every meter of our world in their own blood. Above the planet, General Vrax watched the fires burn with satisfaction. The humans had fought better than expected, but it did not matter. Nothing could stop the Mordek war machine. Begin landing operations, he ordered. I want genetic samples from their leaders. The rest can be processed as common stock. He leaned back in his chair and laughed. The mute world sent no help. Their children burn, and they say nothing. Truly, humans are the most pathetic species in the galaxy. His officers laughed with him. The joke was funny because it was true. Earth had heard the cries of its people, and Earth had done nothing, or so they believed. Far away, in the shadows between stars, 1,000 lights began to glow. Engines older than some civilizations rumbled to life. Weapons powered up. Crews took their stations. Admiral Park Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the Gyeomjong-taeyang, his face carved from stone. Around him, the largest fleet ever assembled by humanity, prepared to jump. Sir, Lieutenant Kwon Minho reported, fold space calculations complete, all ships ready. Casualties on Shinterra? 847,000 confirmed dead, rising every minute. Admiral Park's hands tightened into fists. Those were his people, his family, and he had let them burn so that humanity could have its justified war. He would carry that weight for the rest of his life. Open fleet-wide channel, he ordered. His voice went out to every ship, every sailor, every soldier. This is Admiral Park. The enemy has attacked our people. They have murdered our children. They think we are silent because we are weak. They think we do not answer because we cannot fight. His voice grew cold as death itself. Today, we show them how wrong they are. All ships begin jump sequence. Target: Shinterra. Mission: no mercy. Space itself seemed to crack as 1,047 human warships folded reality and vanished. The silence was about to end. General Vrax was preparing his victory speech when the screaming started. Not screaming from the planet below, he had grown bored of those sounds hours ago. This screaming came from his own officers, from his own bridge, from creatures who had never known fear in their entire lives. General, emergency contact. Multiple contacts. Impossible readings. Vrax spun around, ready to execute whoever was interrupting his moment of glory. Then he saw the display screen, and his blood turned to ice. Space was tearing itself apart. Fold space ruptures were appearing across his entire sensor grid. Not one, not 10, hundreds, then 1,000, then more than 1,000. Points of light ripping through the fabric of reality itself, each one vomiting out a massive warship. Human warships. That's impossible. His sensor officer whispered. The humans have no fleet. They have no fold space technology. They have nothing. Ah, but the ships kept coming. Black hulls that absorbed all light. Weapons arrays that glowed with terrible energy. Vessels 3 times the size of anything the Mordek had ever built. 1,047 human warships surrounded the Mordek fleet like wolves circling trapped prey. And then, Admiral Park Do-hyun's face appeared on every screen, every Mordek ship, every galactic assembly monitor, every alien broadcast frequency across 1,000 light-years. The first human face the galaxy had ever seen. He was not young, he was not handsome. He was just a man with gray hair and cold eyes. But when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 200 years of patience. For 200 years, you called us silent. His words echoed through the Mordek fleet. Soldiers stopped moving. Officers stopped breathing. Even General Vrax could not look away. You called us primitive. You called us prey. You laughed at the mute world that could not answer your calls. You declared us harvestable. You voted to process us like animals. Admiral Park's eyes burned with quiet fury. You were wrong. On the planet below, Sergeant Ryu Woojin heard the transmission through his broken radio. He was bleeding from a wound in his shoulder, surrounded by the bodies of Mordek soldiers he had killed in hand-to-hand combat. He thought he was about to die. Then he looked up at the sky and saw the most beautiful sight of his life. Ships, human ships, filling the sky like stars, come down to Earth. So many ships that they blocked out the sun. Tears ran down his face. "They came," he whispered. Earth answered. "They came." Admiral Park continued his broadcast. "We were not silent because we could not speak. We were silent because we were listening, learning, preparing. Every message you sent, we decoded. Every fleet movement you made, we tracked. Every weapon you designed, we studied and improved." He leaned forward, his face filling the screens. "You touched our children. You burned our cities. You murdered 800,000 innocent people who wanted nothing but peace." His voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than any shout. "Now hear the voice of Earth, and know that silence was never weakness. Silence was the predator waiting to strike." The channel went dead. Captain Lee Yuna did not wait for the formal attack order. She had watched her people burn for hours, unable to help. Now, her time had come. "All wings, execute Operation Thunder's Echo," she commanded. "Target their engines first. I want them unable to run." Her carrier group, 40 ships of the finest pilots humanity had ever trained, dove toward the Mordek fleet like lightning from a clear sky. The enemy tried to respond, but they were too slow, too confused, too afraid. Lieutenant Kwon Minho's tactical algorithms had predicted every Mordek maneuver before they could make it. For 2 centuries, humanity had studied these creatures. They knew how Mordek commanders thought. They knew how Mordek ships moved. They knew every weakness. The first 40 Mordek vessels lost their engines in 90 seconds. "Return fire!" General Vrax screamed, finally finding his voice. "All ships, return fire! Destroy them!" The Mordek weapons opened up. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy beams, everything they had. For 3 seconds, space itself turned white with firepower. When the light faded, not a single human ship had been hit. Their hulls absorbed the energy. Their shields bent the missiles away. Technology 200 years more advanced than anything the Mordek had ever faced. And then, the humans fired back. The Jeomjung Taeyang spoke first. Its main weapon, a focused beam of collapsed matter, struck the Mordek destroyer, closest to General Vrax. The enemy ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next, empty space. 3,000 Mordek soldiers, gone in less than a second. "No!" Vrax roared. "Impossible! This is impossible!" But possible or not, it was happening. Human ships were everywhere, striking from every angle. The Mordek fleet, so proud and powerful just minutes ago, was being torn apart like paper in a hurricane. Captain Lee Yuna flew her carrier through the heart of the battle, her pilots destroying enemy ships with surgical precision. "This is for New Busan," she whispered, as one Mordek vessel exploded. "This is for Eastfield. This is for every child you murdered." Colonel Bei Jinsu watched from the surface, his surviving soldiers cheering around him. The Mordek ground troops had stopped advancing. They were looking up at the sky, watching their fleet die. "Now," Colonel Bei said softly, "now we take our world back." He raised his sword and charged. 3,000 human soldiers followed, screaming with rage and joy. The Mordek, so confident just hours ago, broke and ran. General Vrax tried to escape. He ordered his flagship to maximum speed, aiming for the edge of the system. If he could reach open space, if he could fold away. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kwon Minho reported calmly. "The enemy flagship is attempting to flee." Admiral Park Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Let no ship escape. The galaxy must see what happens when you harm humanity." Captain Lee Yuna's carrier group was already moving. 50 human ships surrounded the Iron Jaw, cutting off every escape route. "General Vrax," Captain Lee broadcast. "This is Captain Lee Yuna of the Earth vessel Silent Thunder. You have murdered 800,000 of my people. You called us prey. You laughed at our silence. She paused. Her voice was ice. I am not laughing. Vrax tried to surrender. He actually tried. The great Mordek general, conqueror of 100 worlds, begged for his life like a frightened child. Please, I'll give you anything. Information. Weapons. Territory. Just spare my life. Captain Lee's response was to fire every weapon on her ship. The iron jaw exploded in a ball of blue fire. General Vrax, the monster who had burned Shin Terra's cities, died screaming. No one mourned him. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, not a single Mordek ship remained. 200 vessels. Destroyed without exception. Human losses. 23 ships. Less than 2%. In the Galactic Assembly Hall, the representatives sat in stunned silence. They had watched the entire battle through long-range sensors. They had seen the mute world reveal a fleet larger than any in the galaxy. They had seen the Mordek, one of the most feared warrior species, destroyed in hours. Ambassador Torik's hands were shaking. He had proposed harvesting these creatures. He had called them livestock. Now he understood that he had been mocking a sleeping dragon, and the dragon had woken up angry. On Shin Terra, the survivors emerged from their shelters. Governor Yoon Ha-young walked through the ruined streets of her capital city, tears streaming down her face. The sky was filled with human ships. Rescue vessels were landing everywhere, bringing doctors and supplies and soldiers to protect what remained. Dr. No Unji had not slept in 36 hours. She was covered in blood, her own and others. But when she stepped outside and saw the fleet above, she fell to her knees and wept. They came, she said, over and over. They heard us. They came. Admiral Park Do-hyun broadcast one final message to the galaxy. His face was tired, his eyes heavy with the weight of 800,000 dead. But his voice was strong. This battle is over. The Mordek fleet no longer exists. But let this serve as a warning to every species that watches. He stood straight, a soldier carrying the hopes of all humanity. Earth does not threaten. Earth does not boast. Earth does not warn twice. We simply act, and now you know what our silence contained. He took a breath. We did not want war. We wanted peace. We wanted to be left alone. But you declared us prey, and prey we will never be. Attack us again, and you will receive the same answer. 1,000 ships, 1,000 voices, and no mercy for those who harm our children. The transmission ended. For the first time in 200 years, the galaxy knew humanity's voice. And that voice had spoken thunder. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Shin Terra. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Mordek Empire had collapsed within 3 months. When news of General Vrax's destruction reached their homeworld, panic spread like wildfire. A species that had based its entire culture on strength and conquest suddenly realized they were not the strongest. Their government fell. Their military scattered. Their empire, built on 10,000 years of violence, crumbled into dust. The other species of the galaxy watched and learned a very important lesson. Humans were not to be touched. Director Baek Soo-jin stood at the landing platform outside New Seoul, Earth's capital city. She wore her finest formal clothes, a traditional Korean hanbok, in deep blue and silver. Today was the most important day in human history. Today, the Galactic Council was coming to Earth. Not to threaten, not to harvest, to negotiate. They're afraid of us, said Engineer Choi Tae-woo, standing beside her. I can see it in their diplomatic messages. Every word is careful. Every sentence is respectful. Good, Director Baek replied. Fear will keep them honest. IDM knew them. 5 Lee 150. 5 Lee 1 knew them. 5 Lee 1. 5 Lee 1. 5 Lee 1 knew them. 5 Lee 1. 5 Lee 1 knew them. 5 Lee 1 knew them. 5. A fold space rupture opened in the sky above them. A single alien vessel emerged, a small diplomatic ship, designed for communication rather than combat. It landed gently on the platform. and a door opened. Ambassador Torek stepped out first. He looked different from the arrogant creature who had proposed harvesting humanity. His forearms were held close to his body. His steps were slow and careful. His eyes were low. Behind him came representatives from the Solari Collective, the remaining Mordic leadership, and 4 other species. They walked like people entering a lion's den. Director Bake smiled. It was not a warm smile. Ambassador Torek, welcome to Earth. Torek bowed deeply, a gesture of submission that would have been unthinkable 1 year ago. Director Bake, thank you for receiving us. The Galactic Council wishes to discuss peaceful relations with humanity. Of course, Director Bake said smoothly. Follow me. She led them through the streets of New Sol. The aliens looked around with wonder and fear. Humans walked past them without a second glance, children playing, workers heading to jobs, elderly couples enjoying the sun. Normal life, continuing as always. But above the city, human warships patrolled in silent formation. A constant reminder of what Earth could do if threatened. They entered the Great Assembly Hall, where the leaders of Earth's united government waited. Admiral Park Do-hun sat at the head of the table, his gray hair now pure white after the stress of the past year. Captain Lee Yuna stood behind him, her hand resting casually on a ceremonial sword. Lieutenant Kwon Minho, now Captain Minho, monitored the room's sensors. Please, sit, Admiral Park said, gesturing to chairs that had been built for alien bodies. Ambassador Torek sat nervously. Admiral Park, your speech at Shin Terra has been broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species knows your words. Good. Then you understand our position. Torek swallowed hard. The Council wishes to know what humanity wants. We are prepared to offer territory, technology, trade agreements, anything that will establish peaceful relations. Admiral Park studied the alien with cold eyes. You want to know what we want? Yes, we want nothing from you. The aliens looked confused. Nothing? Nothing. Admiral Park stood and walked to the window, looking out at his world. We built our fleet to defend ourselves, not to conquer, not to harvest, not to rule. We wanted to be left alone. That is still what we want. He turned back to face them. But we have conditions. Name them, Torek said quickly. Too quickly. First, no species will ever attack a human settlement again. Any act of aggression will be met with immediate and total response, not negotiation, not warnings. Destruction. The aliens nodded frantically. Second, the practice of harvesting sentient species ends. Everywhere. The genetic processing facilities of the Mordic and other species will be shut down. All captive populations will be freed. Torek's eyes widened. That is, a significant change to galactic culture. Then galactic culture needs to change. Admiral Park's voice was iron. You called us primitive. You called us animals. But we know right from wrong. We know that enslaving thinking beings is evil. You will learn this truth, or you will face the consequences. Silence fell over the room. The aliens looked at each other, uncertain. Finally, Ambassador Torek bowed his head. I thought you might. The negotiations continued for several hours, but the important decisions had already been made. Humanity would remain independent. The galaxy would leave them alone, and the practice of harvesting lesser species would end forever. When it was over, Director Bake escorted the aliens back to their ship. Ambassador Torek paused at the door. Director Bake, he said quietly, may I ask you something? You may. Why? Why did humanity hide for so long? You could have joined the galactic community centuries ago. You could have shared technology, grown together with us. Why choose silence? Director Bake thought for a moment. A wise general once said, appear weak when you are strong. We appeared silent when we had 1,000 voices ready to answer. She looked up at the sky, where human ships still patrolled. The question was never whether we could speak. Ambassador. The question was whether you were ready to listen. She smiled genuinely this time. Perhaps now you are. 3 days later, Captain Kwon Minho traveled to Shin Terra. The planet was healing slowly. New buildings rose where old ones had burned. Fields were being replanted. Children laughed again in rebuilt playgrounds. But some wounds could not be healed with time. Minho walked through the memorial garden, a peaceful space built in the heart of the capital city. In the center stood a great stone wall, covered in names. 847,000 names. Every person who had died in the Mordek attack. He placed his hand on the cold stone and closed his eyes. "Captain Minho?" a voice said softly. He turned to see Governor Yoon Ha-young approaching. She looked older than she had before the attack, more gray in her hair, more lines on her face. But her eyes were still kind. "Governor, I hope I'm not intruding." "Never." She stood beside him, looking at the wall of names. "Do you know why I come here every day? To remember them? To remember why we fight." She touched one name with her fingers, a common Korean name, one of thousands. "My daughter." She was 30 years old. She was a teacher. She loved singing and cooking bad food that she thought was delicious. Her voice broke, but she continued. She was helping evacuate children when the second bombardment hit. She saved 42 lives. She lost her own. Minho did not know what to say. What could anyone say? "I don't hate the Mordek anymore," Governor Ha-young said quietly. "Hate is too heavy to carry forever. But I will never forget. None of us will ever forget. And we will make sure that what happened here never happens again." She turned to face him. "You were there at the battle. You helped save what was left of us." "Thank you, Captain." Minho bowed deeply. "I wish we could have come sooner. I wish we could have saved them all." "So do I." Governor Ha-young placed her hand on his shoulder. "But you came. When the galaxy mocked us. When they called us prey. When they burned our world." Earth answered, "That is what matters. That is what we will remember." She walked away, leaving Minho alone with the wall of names. He stood there for a long time, reading name after name. Regular people, workers and artists, and scientists and children. People who had wanted nothing but peaceful lives on a peaceful world. He whispered to them. To all 847,000 souls who could no longer hear. We answered. We will always answer. We answer. Then he walked away. Back to his ship. Back to his duty. Behind him, the memorial garden stood silent and beautiful. A reminder of the price of peace. Above the planet, human warships continued their eternal patrol. They would never leave. They would never forget. And they would never allow another species to mistake silence for weakness. The galaxy had learned fear that day at Shin Terra. Fear of a small blue planet that had stayed quiet while others boasted. Fear of patient eyes that had watched and learned for 2 centuries. Fear of a species that did not threaten, did not warn, but simply acted when pushed too far. Humanity had spoken at last, and the galaxy would never forget the sound. For in the end, the mocking voices had been wrong. Earth's silence had never been weakness. It had been the calm before the storm. And when the storm finally came, it had brought 1,000 warships to speak for all the quiet generations who had built them. The stars belonged to everyone now. But the galaxy knew, in the depths of its ancient heart, that some silences were more dangerous than any sound. Humanity was no longer silent, and they would never be prey again.